for stand on top. Here's a really good one.
Just use mine.
Use mine.
I'm very satisfied.
Definitely recommend.
Problem gone.
Thank you.
I've had this problem.
Big problem.
I really needed.
A good videographer.
And I kept searching.
And searching.
There are so many choices.
It's really hard to find one that has all the things on my list.
But I finally did it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you.
If you were looking for one as well, look no further.
Here's a really good one.
Just use mine.
Use mine.
I'm very satisfied.
Definitely recommend.
Problem gone.
Thank you.
I've had this problem.
Big problem.
I really needed.
A good videographer.
And I kept searching.
And searching.
There are so many choices.
It's really hard to find one that has all the things on my list.
But I finally did it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you.
If you were looking for one as well, look no further.
Here's a really good one.
Just use mine.
Use mine.
I'm very satisfied.
Definitely recommend.
Problem gone.
Thank you.
I've had this problem.
Big problem.
I really needed.
A good videographer.
And I kept searching.
And searching.
There are so many choices.
It's really hard to find one that has all the things on my list.
But I finally did it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you.
If you were looking for one as well, look no further.
Here's a really good one.
Just use mine.
Use mine.
I'm very satisfied.
Definitely recommend.
Problem gone.
Fellow Amazonians, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. Thank you. Fellow Amazonians, I apologize for that technical issue there. Good evening once again. Thanks for joining this broadcast. We are live with the Secretary of State for Communications and IT, Dr. Martin Mungwa. And in today's briefing, the weekly briefing, Dr. Martin Mungwa will be getting deep and deeper into some of the aspects of our discussions of last week. And just a recap, last week we had an extended discussion as to the history behind France's hegemony, or the Franco-Cameroon hegemony in the Cameroons. Today, Dr. Martin will be giving the government's position or reaction towards the behavior of the traditional rulers that are currently in France, purportedly to make communication on our behalf without consulting the people that are their subjects or that they are called to serve. We believe that is an arrogant behavior, and we are expecting tonight that the spokesman for the government will actually present to the public some confident information as to what the government has decided to do during such a time. It is very important that we take note of that. It is also important for us to realize that we are at a delicate time in our struggle. Lots of things are happening, and we need to put our ears where we ought to so that we can get proper communications or instruction on the way forward. It doesn't really matter where you are. Perhaps you're in ground zero, you're in ground one. Sorry, perhaps you're in the home front or in ground one or ground two. or in the diaspora, the interim government has a program that involves everyone. And it is the responsibility of this platform, ABC Amber TV, to ensure that that is communicated to you appropriately. I would like to start by apologizing. The late start is because we're trying to connect, we're producing virtually from different parts of the world, and sometimes connectivity, we have to do some things. And then the most important reason is the restructuring. We are restructuring so that we can optimize our production and meet global standards. It will take a little bit of time. It's a work in progress, and I believe we are actually doing huge. I will not want to waste so much of our time as far as the discussion today is concerned. The, the SOS for Communications and IT indicated earlier on that he has some extensive discussions to or expose to present on the subject of today. Perhaps you may just want me to go through some of the highlights of our discussion this evening, and that is what I'm going to do right now. And right immediately, we will be transitioning into the office of the Secretary of State for Communication, so that we get started. Now, this evening, the Secretary of State for Communication will be talking about why he's going to try to explain to us why Unity Warriors is bad for the Amazonian Restoration Forces and the struggle. He will also talk why federation cannot work between free Amazonia and enslaved La Republique, the sacred accords. If you remember last week, we expanded on that, and this week he wants to go even deeper. The the Secretary Martin Mungwa will also be talking on why Ayuk Tabe will live in chains forever if the IG under Dr. Sacco fails. It's very instrumental for us to get to understand that. Also, we will be talking on why Philemon Young cannot serve a corrupt government and stay incorruptible. The intelligence has it that he's one of those Cameroon is projecting as vice president, first vice president of the reinstituted office that was deleted some decades ago. The question we may want to ask is, why was it initially deleted? Why are they bringing it? Is it all a ploy to deceive us, the former British Southern Cameroonians, now Amazonians, that we can be one? Now, we understand they have failed in a couple of things. After failing to use proxies from Norway, Kondengi, and some big mouths from Texas, they are now changing the strategy, consulting our traditional rulers, taking them in the back door into France. News is reaching us that Cameroon is trying to change the rhetoric. Cameroon wants to change the fact that they are there for some kind of a treaty, which is some good news. But I believe our response on the social media, our proactive reaction, has provoked them to want to change. We are hearing that we're being told or informed that they went there for some workshop to establish museums, and it is quite funny because there are a lot of questions to ask. Why focused on Amazonian lead for a workshop in France? The two Cameroons put together has about 364 ethnic groups, if I'm not mistaken, a minimum of 350 ethnic groups. And all of these groups have traditional rulers. It would have been a great thing for Cameroon to transport all of this or fly all of them to Paris for a workshop that will benefit the entire nation. Why focus on the rulers or the traditional rulers of British Southern Cameroons? And you noticed these rulers were all putting the grass-fed traditional outfit. That's a message. It's just to tell you, it's a message. That is what Cameroon has tried to use to project the two countries. this traditional outfit that is representative of the Bantus and the grassfield Bantus, who are mostly British Southern Cameroonians and Bazonians in this evil construct of the Cameroons and Semak. It's quite important that these questions be highlighted. And it is my hope, as well as your hope, the hope of the peoples of the former British Southern Cameroons, to listen to what our government would have to say. We, the people, have responded on the social media. We have categorically and outrightly denied any negotiations or treaties that will be signed by some traditional rulers without consulting us. And we want to know government position. Is government endorsing the behavior of these traditional rulers, or government listening to her people? And if government is listening to her people, what are the measures? What is the framework to ensure that whatever is done in France does not impact or affect our struggle or the generations to come? We are victims of negotiations, backdoor negotiations between Charles de Gaulle and Alexander of Britain. That was during pre-colonial times. We are victims of a botched decolonization process, where we believe that Great Britain left before time, abandoned us, and it would not be wrong for us to say it was a conspiracy, and Cameroon, or Ayijo's Cameroon, took advantage of that and invaded our land with their gendarmes. For 6 decades, people have been maimed, have been killed. We have experienced different phases of genocide. In 1972, there was genocide in Southern Cameroon. Unfortunately, there was no media vibration like today, and nobody was talking about it. And nobody was seemingly talking about it. In 1984, there was genocide. In 1992, there was genocide. At this moment, I would like us to move into the office of the Secretary of State for Communication so that we can start our discussion tonight.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time appeals to you. Today, I'm going to talk to you on a number of issues. And first of all, I wish to give a 21-gun salute to the restoration forces. And I recognize the fact that you have been very active in the past week or so, and we are very proud of you. And we look forward to making sure that we provide all you need in order to defend our sovereignty. My talk today will actually be broken into 4 parts. The first, I'm going to give the government stand on the reported meeting in Paris between France and some traditional leaders. I will also talk about an in-depth into the colonial accord that France signed with La République du Cameroun, giving very specifics about the consequences of not abiding by that accord. And thirdly, I'm going to bring out some questions that I picked up on social media, which were not asked the last time I spoke to you, and I will attempt to answer them. And finally, I think it will be time for me to interact with the public. Right. So this is the government position on the France-Cameroon meeting with traditional leaders. The reported France-Cameroon meeting in Paris with traditional leaders, ostensibly on museum training, is laughable. It is very clear that the real reason is to evade the mediation mandated by world powers. By carrying out a more sinister plot to coerce these confused traditional leaders into surrendering their right to statehood and settling for something less. The plan is inadmissible and dead on arrival. We all know that of the palaces of these traditional leaders, which were once productive touristic attractions with historical artifacts, have been systematically targeted and burnt by La République du Cameroon and France. We know the games of the colonialists, and it won't work. If these people were serious, they would have organized a seminar in Amazonia to train them on the spot on how to set up museums in their chiefdoms and fondoms. No, they had to outlive them with all their enchindas and servants and paraphernalia to a foreign country just to teach them museum setup. What a joke. This is the 21st century, not 1959. It's been well documented that some of the traditional leaders were also targeted and slaughtered. The interim government has comprehensive data on the number of chiefs and fonds killed by the French-sponsored terrorists to date. It is an insult to the memory of those killed. And using such a facade to coerce these gullible fonds and chiefs into signing secret accords like La République du Cameroon did on December the 26th, 1959, is unacceptable and shall be met with stiff resistance by all Ambazonians. We remember a less publicized trip to France by John Frundi after the 1992 presidential elections, which were stolen by France. His invitation by the mayor of Marseille led to his conversion into the CPDM party. Today, Frundi has become a toothless bulldog and, in fact, shamelessly and overtly champions the crusade to destroy the same people who once defended him. As a matter of fact, 6 Ambazonians gave their precious lives to save him during the launching of the SDF in Bamenda. Many more were maimed and scarred for life. Many more also defended some of the so-called chiefs and fonds, even as they fled to La République, essentially abdicating and abandoning their fondoms and chiefdoms, men, women, and children to be freely murdered by La République under the instructions of France, undeterred until the ARFs said enough is enough. Has France now turned to chiefs and fonds to follow in Frundi's footsteps? Most likely. We, the people of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, make it loud and clear to France and its proxies in La République that our future cannot be mortgaged by people who have been repudiated and dethroned, many of whom are in exile in a foreign land, La République du Cameroon. This act is reminiscent to the slave trade where chiefs kidnapped and sold their subjects, some of whom ended up being victims of slavery themselves. If history is anything to go by, sooner or later, these fonds and chiefs will be betrayed and eliminated by the same La République thugs that accompanied them to Yaoundé and France. The current conflict is between La République du Cameroon and the people of Ambazonia, not chiefs and fonds. And trying to secretly negotiate with the latter is illegal and dangerous. This colonial practice to selectively choose the people's interlocutors of their choosing against all democratic norms, as has been the case in the past, cannot and will not be condoned. This war is an existential one. Therefore, any attempt to accelerate the process through a secret treaty with the same foreign colonial power and mastermind of the brutal colonization of Amazonia is totally unacceptable and will be vigorously resisted. La République du Cameroon and France have always sought to identify and use either criminals, corrupt individuals, downright illiterates, or so-called elite to illegally and illegitimately speak on our behalf. The list includes Atanganji, Philemon Yang, Diongute, Paul Tasson, Jonathan Fru, Wufi Chinde, Peter Musonge, Are Mengot, etc. The list is long. Having failed to achieve the objective of coercing our people, France has now dubiously, deceitfully, maliciously turned to gullible chiefs and fonds, most of whom do not add any economic value to the GDP of their county or LGAs. We strongly reject these proxies. Ambazonia is free. Today, I'm going to discuss in more detail the colonial accord signed between La République du Cameroon and France on December 26, 1959, to demonstrate how such secret illegal accord endangers our people and our future. So, coming back to my discussion last week, I remember I talked to you, I read the accord. Okay, I'm going to go through again one more time and I'm going to discuss the implications of this accord. And I would really hope that ambassadors will listen and listen very carefully, because we're going into a very, very difficult time. If we sign this accord, or if these chiefs think that they can actually mortgage our future for the benefit of La République and France, then we are in grave danger. We are actually in grave danger. So let me start one more time. France shall determine Cameroon's political, economic, and sociocultural orientations. So what are the consequences if we don't comply? What is going to happen? There's going to be economic sabotage. And France has been doing that consistently in the past. And I'm going to give you very concrete examples. The Cameroon Railways, they destroyed a brand new engine supplied by the Canadians. Okay, sometime, I think in the 80s, 70s and 80s, they were very upset that the Cameroon government bought this railway engine from Canada, and they destroyed it. Okay. And the paper pulp company mysteriously caught fire. This is another a very promising company, was probably the first in West Africa, including both French and English West Africa. This computerized and very sophisticated paper pulp company in Douala. It was actually the pride of the Bassa people, and it went on fire when it spoke, and nobody has been able to explain why. It's part of the economic sabotage. You have equipment bought from non-French companies allowed to rot, such as tractors for mechanized agriculture. These are all examples. They make sure they ignore them. They don't supply, make sure that the supply chain is cut, and there's no way that company can survive, and it ends up not doing anything for the economy. And let's take another example, the University of Chang. This was supposed to be a typical American type A&M, Agriculture and Mechanical University, completely transformed into a regular university, dishing out worthless paper documents in law and other less technical fields. It was such an embarrassment, because I think the Americans were hoping that this university would be the backbone of our economy, training engineers and technicians in agriculture in order to boost our economy. But what is it today? It's just a shelf of his past. All capital investments in Ambazonia, we know the PWD, PowerCam, Santa Coffee, even Cameroon Shipping Lines, Cameroon Airlines. Remember, Cameroon Airlines had a Boeing, which is American, and for a time they wanted to make sure that the Cameroon government sells it and get something French. It didn't happen. What is the story today? It no longer exists, and that goes on and on. Cameroon Bank, National Produce Marketing Board. These are all capital investments that when the French realized that they had no interest in it, the best thing they could do is to destroy it. And this is the issue. This is a big problem. But the next question is that, but how do the French do this? How do they recruit saboteurs? You'll be surprised how easy it is for them to recruit saboteurs. And I'm going to come even closer to what they are doing today. It's very, very, akin to what has been done in the past. In fact, the information that we've gathered is that mostly the easiest saboteurs they recruit are actually students on scholarship abandoned by the Cameroon government. The French show them by providing stipends to complete their research or postgraduate work. Once completed, they are encouraged to return home and seek strategic positions in government. So these are the first people who make sure that they maintain this French hold on the economy by using Cameroonians who study in France. Civil servants, including prominent university professors, are giving up to 25,000 French francs just to visit and tour France, not on research or collaborative programs. So they are issued maybe permanent visas to France at will. They can go there anytime they want. Okay. So once in France, they're indoctrinated with all sort of anti-Anglo-Saxon ideas. So I actually have a very close friend who was part of this mission in the 90s, and he told me about this. So now let's go in terms of the funds and the chiefs. And after Frundi in the 90s, I believe that the French will put these chiefs and funds on a monthly stipend in order to keep control over them. That's what they're going to do. They're not just going to give them a lump sum, they're going to give them a stipend. And in other words, they will be bought so that no matter what La République does, they will stay quiet and indifferent. This is why we have to act and act decisively. I won't be surprised if this list does not include even some mayors now in La Republique and even government delegates. And just to give you a little example, in fact, if people do not know, the parliamentarians, about 150 of them, they're actually on strike. Why are they on strike? Because they haven't given them the money to buy their luxury cars. They're on strike. And yet for the past 5 years, the fellow countrymen, Amazonians, have been slaughtered, and not a single one has opened his mouth or to criticize it. They don't care. And these are people who are supposedly they're there for your interest, to defend you. Yet they go on strike because they haven't given them a stipend to buy luxury cars. And people have been dying. We've lost more than 30,000 people, 30,000 Amazonians, and none of them has raised a voice. This is the same situation that's going to happen with the funds when they come back. They wouldn't care. I can tell you this. They wouldn't care if they slaughter the entire village and they're the only ones living on earth. Get this. This is exactly the plan that France has for us. So that's how France will build its internal spy network, and in order for it to compete with world powers like the United States and Britain at our detriment. The fact of the matter is that they are doing all this at our detriment. Whereas on the surface, it is perhaps okay, but when you are boxed into a situation where you can never make a choice, this is not right. And that's why we all decry these attitudes. If we are allowed to make our choices, if we can choose between maybe something that is made in France or made in Japan and decide that, okay, maybe the French version is the best, we choose it, that is fine. But to, hold us almost at ransom that we can only do what they want, that is what is not okay. So the next item was that France shall manufacture money for Cameroon. That's the CFA. If I'm not mistaken, the factory for printing the CFA money is located in Clermont-Ferrand, a city I once visited. So this is where they print this money and they ship the money to us. France shall guide the determination of Cameroon's educational programs at all levels. Now, if you remember the failed dissolution of the GCE board and followed by the teachers' strike are clear examples of this effort. It is not over yet, especially now that the board has been moved to Yaoundé. Remember, Yaoundé is the place where all Amazonian ideas and people go to take a new identity. After a few years of being a house slave, they return to their homeland to show off their newly acquired status by speaking to their own people in broken French. We've seen that with Mr. Are Mengot, who went to Manfé and addressed his people in French. Can you imagine that? And Paul Tasson, who probably speaks more French than English, even to his own fellow Anglophones or Amazonians. So this is the situation that awaits us. So going to number 4, the French Public Treasury shall have a portfolio named Operations Account to cover 100% of Cameroon's foreign exchange. And this percentage has been revised from 65 to 50% today. Now, this is critical. This is where it is actually the worst of it all. This is what makes us perpetually poor and slaves for good, forever. The details as follows. France pockets 42% of the foreign earnings of Cameroon. 42.5% of our foreign earnings. It used to be 80%. It used to be, I'm sorry about that. It used to be 80% of all foreign earnings. I'm on a call later. Sorry about that. It used to be 80% of all foreign earnings, called clear theft of resources from poor people. So they used to take 80% of all our foreign earnings. And then you can understand why they're putting all these plans into place. Then France controls the educational curriculum to make sure no one knows better than better at their outre-mer schools for Africans, where administration, not science and engineering, is taught. You realize that for you to be any person of value or of importance or respect, you have to go to somewhere they call ENAM, where all they teach you is how to steal from the government. In fact, the first item, whenever somebody is either made a director or a SDO, the first thing is, how am I going to enrich myself? If it is a contract, they try to make sure they steal as much as possible. That's why the country has never been able to accomplish a single capital investment for 60 years. Take the roads that were built. If you go there now, there are no more roads. What happened? Because the money is systematically embezzled and stolen. And that's exactly what the French want. You have to be corrupt so that they always come out to prove to you that, oh, these are the saviors. They know how to do things better. But it's actually systematic. It's actually built into the system. Whether it's a minister, anybody. Have you ever seen anybody in control who ever cares about the common man? Look at the MPs today. They are all on strike because they haven't given them money to buy luxury cars. Luxury cars where, even in a country where there are no roads, you would have imagined that they'll be clamoring for better roads and better structures that will support the community. They are all for themselves. Those MPs or parliamentarians, if they destroy or they kill everybody, even in their homes of origin, they will not care. They will not care. We have to know this. These are the first enemies of our people. The SDOs, the parliamentarians, and the chiefs, because that's exactly what they are doing right now. We have ample examples to prove the point. So, just continuing with this strategy that the French signed with La République, and they want to extend it to us. That is true. The true cost of using French, which is their language, losing 50% of our foreign earnings, is a budget killer. We cannot emerge. We cannot emerge. So, as I said earlier, all they do is teach us administration so that you cannot compete with them in science and engineering. And that's to make sure that all high-end jobs are done by the French for you. In fact, recently, I think one director of a corporate entity actually said there are no trained Cameroonians to lead and to be head of big enterprises. And Cameroonians were going helter-skelter. They said, are you serious? How? How come? We have educated people from the Polytechnic, wherever. Oh my goodness, you leave the Polytechnic, the best you can get is an entry-level position. It may take you 15 to 20 years for you to rise up to anybody who can, be head of a company. Yet they pull them out of these schools. There's no structure on the corporate world how people have to be trained to climb up the career ladder, and they give them responsibilities that they cannot support. It's a tragedy. And now, let me give you more detail. So, with 50% of our foreign earnings given to another country, a much richer country, there's no way that we can emerge from, any economic downfall. You cannot afford cash to import steel, to build bridges across rivers. You cannot build roads. It's absolutely impossible. And this is how the oil revenue is shared. 15% goes to the production companies, 42.5% goes to Cameroon, and 42.5% goes to France. So you see what is happening. So if the production company is a French company, they will take 15% plus 42%. We are talking about more than 50, almost 60% of the oil revenues goes to France. This is what we are paying for. This is what these chiefs and funds are going to sign. And we are there just watching them do this in the name of a treaty. We should not accept this. We are forfeiting our future and the future of our offsprings. So, on other trades with foreign countries, France pockets 50% Cameroon gets. Okay? They pocket 50%. And Cameroon gets zero on trades of France with other countries. So when France trades with other countries, we get nothing. But when Cameroon trades with foreign countries, 50% goes to France. That is a deal. That is the 1959 deal with La République. This is what Amazonia is going to go into. There is no way we can ever come out of an economic downturn. Impossible. So, Emergence 2035, as they put in French, is a pipe dream. It's never going to happen. Never. Today, they are settling our people, they are setting our own people to destroy their future for free and save that of France. That's exactly what we are doing. Again, another accord deal here. France shall be given priority in the exploitation of Cameroon's strategic raw materials. In the event where France is not interested, Cameroon may seek other partners or exploit the raw materials themselves. Impossible. They'll make sure that they have a hand in everything, whether is looking for mineral water, they'll be there. Anything that's of value, they'll be there. And especially now, they just want to make sure that the Amazonia is as wretched and as useless, as impoverished as possible. This is the plan that France has for us. We shall be an impoverished people, will have no value, and will have no power. We should all know this. This is what the future is. This is the future of Amazonia. Now, again, as I said last week, on the 10th of November 1961, there was military assistance each time that the Cameroonian president is overwhelmed by an external aggression or internal rebellion. He may call on French military assistance. In the event where the Cameroonian president is unable to seek this assistance by any form of communication, the French ambassador to Cameroon can make the request instead of the Cameroonian authorities. Now, let me tell you something which many Ambazonians don't know about this French military assistance. Do you know that the French military recruits La République's citizens directly into the French army? This has been going on for many years, and there's a reason for that. Upon retirement, they return home to constitute a group of retired militias who have received superior training in the French military. Disguised as National Guards, they may be called upon to initiate a coup d'etat. These retirees have a strong network with French intelligence, and do not be excited if we are promised an Anglophone head of state, because he will be a puppet, because he can be taken out at any time. So you have a lot of La République citizens who get into French military directly from Cameroon. After retiring, they go back to La République, and that's where they are. And they form this intelligence, and they make sure that everything stays the way the accord spells out. So in case of problems, they use these guys, and you may think, oh, how come? No, they may not show up. The white guy will not show up. They'll simply be giving them instructions and the information they need in order to take down any rebellion. And that's why you're saying nobody has attempted to take out Paul Biya in power. Okay, so this is what I wanted to talk to you today, give you more detail, and I hope it's going to create some sort of subject for us to discuss among yourselves and to know exactly why we're fighting for this war, to make sure that we liberate ourselves once and for all. Now, last week when I did a presentation, there were some questions that unfortunately Paddy and Casey did not ask, but some very smart Amazonians actually asked these questions. I picked up a few on social media and I wrote them down, and I hope to answer them now. They're very pertinent and very intelligent. The first question is, why does a contract signed between La République and France affect us? Very good question. And this actually ties in with the reasons why they cannot be a federation. When La République and France signed this document, on that paper, it is stated that this contract is between La République du Cameroon and France. Suddenly, we came into the picture. We had a federation. In terms of a contract, if that name, Federal Republic of Cameroon, does not appear on that contract is null and void. So France discovered that it was a big mistake for us to have a federation. And immediately it started making plans to torpedo that federation such that it fails. So it was a deliberate act, because the moment we were a federated state, that contract was null and void, because Federal Republic of Cameroon does not appear on that accord. It is La République du Cameroun. So the plan was to make sure they come back to La République, so that that accord will be effective. And that's exactly what they did. From Federal Republic of Cameroon, they changed it to United Republic of Cameroon. At least there was some semblance of a democratic process, although it was fraud. But what did Biya do when he became president? With the strike of a pen, or with the stroke of a pen, he changed it to La République du Cameroun. Do you understand it? Do you see what happened? That's why Biya changed it, because that was the condition for the French to give him full military support throughout his reign, because he did not use any legislative process to change that name back to La République so that the accord should be effective. And that's exactly what they are doing today. They want the chiefs to go and sign that accord in France so that they will enforce it, so that we have one Cameroon, so that this accord is effective, is enforceable. Otherwise, if we ever go to a federated state, this accord is null and void. So for those who think that we are going to have a federation, it's not going to happen. La République has never presented that option to anybody. The Chris Anu Marianta faction, they go out there giving the impression that they are going to fight for a federation, and then later on we can split and do whatever. It is not going to happen. Nobody ever proposed a federation to you. Show me the letter or the note that La République sent to you saying we want you to consider a federation. It is not going to happen, because if it happens, it renders this accord null and void from a legal point of view. And the French they depend on this accord for their survival. So let it be known, there is no Federal Republic of Cameroon. Never. It will never happen unless you abrogate this accord, unless you tear it and say this accord is no longer applicable. If you do that, maybe, and just maybe, but I can't see that happening. So that was a very, very intelligent question that whoever asked me, I picked it up on social media. So that's why we are fighting this fight, because if we don't, everything that we own will be given to the French for free. We'll be homeless in our own country. We'll be beggars on our streets. This is very serious. Now, as I told you, it is very unlikely that Tabe Ayuk will ever leave jail in the very near future, unless he is ready to sell everything. But I don't think they trust him. They don't trust him. They think that he's just a clever guy. If you let him out of jail, he will go and start telling Ambazonians that, okay, I may agree, we may agree on something else. It is not what I actually thought about. That's why they're taking the cheap and fun route, because some of them are just illiterate. They can't even read. So whatever the show put in front of them, they didn't even take their legal advisors. Can you imagine you sign a contract without talking to your attorney, your lawyer? If they come back to Ambazonia with a treaty that's been signed, without any evidence that they got a lawyer from Ambazonia to look through that treaty and say this treaty is in favor, it is null and void, and we can fight for that. That is the law. And if a person like Ayuk is released, and I hope something happens that he gets released, they'll treat them just like they treat a Tanganji. You know, a Tanganji is a prisoner. And whenever he opens his mouth, they said, "You listen, this is what you did. Just be careful. Just watch out what you say." And he toes the line. That's what La République does all the time. You all know that. I don't have to tell you this story. And you can see why the French value beer. Because he was able to, with the stroke of a pen, he changed the name of a country. This is very serious. And whoever comes after Biya, they will make sure that the name remains La République du Cameroun, so that that accord is in place. So now what can Sisiko do so that the international community can turn back and say, free Mr. Ayuk Tabe? What can he do? If he dissolves his cabinet in jail and transfers the powers to President Sako, that is possible. But so long as he's in jail with his cabinet, then he's captive. He's been, yes, just like you capture the entire cabinet and you set the conditions for their release. That's exactly what La République is doing. He's told Mr. Ayuk Tabe, I'm going to set the conditions for your release because your entire cabinet is in jail. Nobody's out there to cry for you. So if Mr. Ayuk Tabe dissolves that cabinet in jail and asks Mr. Dr. Ayuk, sorry, Dr. Sako, that please, the fight is with you, just like Nelson Mandela did, then he has a chance that the international community will start talking about him and pushing the La République government to release him. Other than that, his mercy, his future is in the hands of La République. So, I mean, talking about, people have said, oh, why is Dr. Sako fighting from America or from overseas? Why doesn't he go back to Ambazonia and fight? Ask the French, where was de Gaulle during the war? Was he not in England? He was fighting the war from England. But that was good for France. That was good for France and not for us. And one thing you should also understand, when Oliver Tambo went to England fighting the apartheid regime, could you have imagined that happening in France? This is a regime that worked with the British government. The same British government gave independence to South Africa. But Oliver Tambo had the right to fight that evil government, in as much as there were British companies working in South Africa. That is the market difference between the British and the French or Anglo-Saxon way of legal system. If that were in France, if Dr. Sako was living in France, I can assure you that he would have been arrested and killed. That is the French for you. They have no tolerance for democratic values. No tolerance whatsoever, especially if you are not of the Caucasian race. You have no right to express any democratic values. I want Ambazonians to understand this. This is critical. So I have given you a full picture of the IG stance as far as this meeting between France and some gullible fonts and chiefs from the Northwest and Southwest. And it's important for us to know this. We have to take our future into our hands. We have to fight this to the last man. It is taking a turn that is very dangerous and extremely bad for us and our future. Thank you. Over to you, Paddy.
Good evening, sir. Can you hear me? Dr. Mungwa, please, can you hear me? Okay. If you can hear me, I think we can now make progress with the discussion. Fellow Amazonians, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard elaborately what the SOS has said. I would like the technicians to bring me and him on the screen so that we can immediately start up with the questioning. It has been a wonderful time. You've taken about 30 minutes to educate us. You are such a wonderful teacher. I wish I was your student in the days in Polytech. I've always loved to be an engineer, and you took out the time to dissect this discussion in a very exceptional way, like none other will do. You break it and you simplified it. I would say that our understanding as a people has been made simpler today. And there's some things you said, two things which before I give the floor for the public to start calling, we can just put the numbers on the screen so that our people can get ready to call immediately we usher them. You've made some very serious statements, Secretary Martin Mungwa. You said something. You said former President Julius Ayuk Tabe may just remain imprisoned forever if nothing is done with the situation at hand. You said if nothing is done, he might just remain in prison. Now, and you also said unless he relinquishes power to President Sako, that is when he is fit. By insinuation, you're saying that until we win the war on his behalf, he's doomed because Cameroon might have no pity.
That's
Am I
correct.
correct?
That's absolutely correct. Unless he promises to do things that, if you learn about them, you realize that he may as well just stay in prison. He will be like another Tanganji. Do we have to go far? They can ask him to do things. If he doesn't, they have the right to, present charges against him, and you have to comply. We see that with Tanganji. We know he was a prisoner. We know that. He was a criminal. He is a criminal. How different will it be with Mr. Ayuk Tabe? You tell me. Is that not logic? It's just so simple. So if you hear tomorrow that as a result of this presentation, they released Mr. Ayuk Tabe, I can assure you that he will never say anything about this struggle again, because they'll give him conditions. They'll tell him, if you ever criticize this government, if you ever do anything against this government, that's the end of you. And he'll comply. If he hadn't made this mistake to say, I am going to form my own cabinet in jail, it would have been different. So he literally just offered his cabinet to La Republique, say, oh, here we are. Do whatever you want with us. We have nothing to do with the outside world. Can you imagine how dangerous that was? I wonder whether he was thinking. Imagine Mr. Mandela told the white South African government, oh, I no longer, represent what an ANC, it's we, Those that have been arrested, here we represent ANC. And then the government is, okay, let's negotiate. Forget about those guys outside. You are, all of you are here, right? What do you want us to do for you? And they'll give the conditions because they have the knife and the yam, as we say it. You have everything. So it was a really, really bad calculation that he did. He should not have done that. And you can see that the splintering goes on. You have another group now, they want to reconnect with Mr. Ayuk in jail, thinking that they are going to form a united front. You form a united front with a prisoner? And the charges that were laid against that prisoner, don't you think that they will extend the same charges to you if you all agree that you're on the same side? I mean, you tell me. You have Cometa and the Marianta group. Or actually, I mean, I think the head of the group is actually Chris Anu and Marianta. They're the ones.
I think it should be Chris Anu and Mungwa. Marianta is like a figurehead.
I don't even know who is who. The names keep changing, you know. But at least I know Chris Anu is the main guy in the whole deal. You know, he's the one, you know, manipulating the group. So that is what that's the plan for them, and that's very convenient to Mr. Biya. Very convenient. And all the secret deals that Chris Anu has been doing with the government, with Banqui and so on, and he proudly said it in a phone call I had with Chris Anu. He said it. Mr. Banqui called him when he was on his way back to the United States. But at least what he told me was that, well, Mr. Banqui called him to tell him that they crossed each other at Addis Ababa airport. I said, but how did he call you? That's what I never understood. How did he call you? You speak with him?
Yeah.
So we all know the plan that they have.
But you know, this is a man who naturally lies. I really wouldn't want us to focus on him today. I want us to get also into something else that you said. But before you said, I want you to add something on this. Do you think that Ayuk Tabe was aware of the intricacies that you have just explained and still decided to think about himself? Or perhaps he has just been deceived to believe that, okay, if he has the power and he can control from within, then he can just be released so that something can happen. Do you think that that is what Atam Milan and the Scoop was trying to do? Maybe they have been lured or deceived, and this might just be true nationalists, not guys that are willing to sell us. Do you think it's out of desperation and that they are ignorant of the intricacies?
I think it was a combination of greed and ignorance. It was a combination of greed and ignorance. And even when they discovered that they have made an error, instead of sticking to their legal advices, you must have heard when Barrister John Frew said Mr. Tabe was compromised, and everybody started screaming at him. They say he's a liar, or they felt that because of one reason or the other, because the guy got facts. For him to secretly start communicating with the director of cabinet at the presidency, one Avolo, whoever that name's, you know, who is. It is against any legal procedure where you start communicating with your accusers without going through your legal counsel. You know, in this country, they will tell you that no matter what happens, you have the right to say, I want to have a lawyer, legal advisor.
But I think Cameroon always likes those things.
Yeah.
Cameroon enjoys.
And before that, what I say greed, this is where the greed comes in. There is sufficient evidence that those who are in jail with him never knew about the deal at Nera Hotel. They were not aware of it. They were duped into going into that meeting. That led to their arrest. So it is very clear that one person knew it. At least one person, and that could only have been Mr. Ayuk Tabe. So that's, and
perhaps one or two others.
Maybe one or two others, but at least he's the key person who knew about it. And had he told his cabinet, I'm sure a lot of them would have protested. How can you go to this meeting without letting the Ambazonian people know? The same thing that these chiefs and fonds are going to France. They're doing the same thing that Mr. Ayuk Tabe did. That is greed. It's the same scenario. Foncha went to Fumban with a constitution that he never discussed with his cabinet members. What happened to him? We are repeating the same things that happened in history. The fonds have gone to France to sign a document that we are not aware of. They don't have a legal advice. Mr. Abendong did not have access to that constitution before they went to Fumban. And he lamented why they didn't even look through that constitution. At least to look at it and say, do we agree with this? The funds going to France, did they know the agenda? Do they know they are going to sign a secret document to sell their birthright to the French? We have to understand this.
And the constitution was even botched. The constitution was even ignored by Cameroon and their French representative. Their constitution was not even looked at.
That's what we find ourselves. That is greed. That is greed. All the way to the MPs who are clamoring for luxury car allowance when their people are being killed. They are on strike. For goodness sake, the MPs in La République Parliament, they are on strike. 150 of them.
And Dr. Martin,
their fellow countrymen are being slaughtered in their villages, and they cannot say a word.
You are saying that these MPs are on a protest or strike for their salaries, not even because they are killing women and babies.
It's not for their salaries. They have salaries for their luxury allowance. They call the allowance
luxury allowance.
It's not even for their salary. I mean, with all the money that they give them for free, they embezzle. You think they lack money to live on? You think they even lack cars to drive? But they are on strike because they didn't give them money to buy brand new cars.
So they are using a strong political instrument for self, not for a common good.
What I'm trying to tell you that whoever is in Yaoundé, whether it's the so-called elite, whether it's he's not there for you. That's the point. He is not there for you. How loud can we say this? They are all greedy people, very greedy. Very unfortunate.
Yeah. Yes, I am sure I'm receiving a caller. Yes, caller, are you calling to contribute for the program?
Yeah, I was just calling. By the way, good evening, Paddy, and good evening, Dr. Mungwa. I like your presentation, and I really like your tenacity and the way you elucidate on facts. It's very clear even to a common man. I was just concerned about a point you made in your presentation by saying that if Sisiku does not relinquish his power, does not relinquish power from prison, he might just as well remain in jail. So my point is, by that statement, does it legitimize the fact that he's still the president and he still has the power and his cabinet members, they are still the rulers of Ambazonia?
Yeah.
Or how do you mean by saying that he should release power? Meanwhile, we know that he is no longer a president of Ambazonia and he has nothing to do with governance. Thank you very much.
Good. Yeah, thank you very much. Where are you calling from, please? Thank you. That was a good question there.
Yeah, good question. And it's very simple to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Has Sisiku said we recognize the fact that he has no powers. It's thanks to Dr. Sako that this revolution is going ahead. But has he said, I am not president? He has not. When they take him for negotiations in Volier, they call him Monsieur le Président. Yeah, he's a fictitious president made out of his mind. He dreams he thinks he's a president. He thinks all those fellow prisoners, that's the cabinet. And he goes around doing that. It's silly, isn't it? He knows he's not effective. What has Mr. Sisiku done? since he went to jail as far as the ARFs are concerned? What has he done? He knows he doesn't have the power, but he wouldn't let it go. It's part of that greed pattern, I'm telling you. Whether it is the MPs in parliament, whether it's the funds who are going to France, whether it is Mr. Ayuk in jail. It's the same element of greed, because the whole power, you don't know who the real power brokers are the ambassador people. As I mentioned, just wait. As I mentioned when I took this office, I say our power is derived from the people. If the people come and say, okay, we don't want you, that's it. We no longer have powers. Just like we cannot decide now that we want a federation. Who gave us the authority to say we want a federation? Nobody. If I decide for a federation, I'll just step aside and let somebody else who thinks that independence is what he believes in. But you cannot go out and decide, oh, we are going for federation. Who offered you a federation? Show me that paper where somebody wrote to you and said, okay, having looked at the past 5 years, we understand that we've had a lot of differences. We recognize the fact that we come from two colonial administrations, and in order to value the cultures of both from both imperial countries, can we form a federation on the basis of this, and this? I mean, that would make sense. We can take that and look at it and say, okay, well, we bring in our lawyers and attorneys. We have an international arbiter. We sit down and we work out the differences. We say, okay, these are the conditions. These are your boundaries. These are our boundaries. And that even leads me to another thing. I heard people, I mean, it was so nauseating to get this information that somebody, or is it Erin Jong, is trying to build a road between Babaju and Bamenda. That's absolute nonsense. Is it not the same colonial mentality that they're trying to enforce to make sure that if you have to travel from one part of Amazonia to another, you have to go through the French part, and that's where you feel the economy? Don't we have that little sense in us to know that? Why can't they build a road from Boya all the way to Ndu without having to pass through Francophone Cameroon? Don't you see what they're doing to us? Everything that you have to do with your neighbor, you have to go through French-Cameroon first. Why are they doing that? Imagine if all the investments that France has in Nigeria, you had the British torpedoing, making sure that nothing that French does works. Would the French be happy? The same thing that they're doing to us. And yet France has a lot of investments protected in Nigeria. And they also make sure that we have no communication with Nigeria. They always want to create divide and rule. They make sure that the Northwest and the so-called Southwest, the Northern and the Southern zone, we have nothing in common. Just putting us in little baskets. And we are accepting it. We have to say no. It's not going to work. But with this greed that a lot of our own countrymen and women have, it's going to be a very, very bitter pill to swallow. These people should not be authorized to come back to Amazonia. All these MPs and ministers who will go and bring foreign soldiers to kill your own brothers and sisters. The sons of farmers, the same farmers who paid their education, who paid their tuition to go to university, who paid their tuition to get educated. The moment you become a cabinet minister, you get soldiers to come and kill those children. They are just a ladder behind you. Just a ladder. You were in that same spot not up to 20, 30 years ago. You have Mr. Musonge saying that you should cut down, get rid of the internet in Amazonia. He says that to his own fellow countrymen and ask the military people to come and kill his own brethren. How can we accept that? I mean, where is that knowledge? So, I mean, is this not greed? Just because Mr. Biya gives him some money, he's ready to do that?
Dr. Mungwa, there's an aspect of that question which I may want you to highlight again. Now, We have a caller online. Caller, please just be patient so that this can be clarified for the audience. Now, you have declared, you have just mentioned that Ayuk Tabe has no power, but then he continues to keep it. Do you think, is there any legal implication when it comes to him keeping it? Or is it just all about a ploy to make sure that, okay, he weakens the outer movement and finally compromise the struggle?
Both answers are correct. I mean, he knows that he weakens the struggle, but I don't think he really cares now. He doesn't care. It's all about him, because he never believed that whatever happened to him was going to happen. He was climbing up to be the president of Ambazonia, to make that negotiations where he will probably be given some amount of money, and then he will live a very happy man for the rest of his life. And it didn't just work. He is shocked, because I remember somebody told me that when he was arrested, he actually asked to see the head of state, because he was given all assurances that they were going to respect him. I mean, if he just knew a little history about La République, the French and beer, he would have thought twice. And if he had sought advice from his ministers or his cabinet, this would not have happened to him. I mean, what else does he have to hang on? That's all he has to hang on. Why will he say, I mean, that's all. They call him president, and he feels he's one. But it's just the thickness of his imagination, nothing more than that.
Yeah, SOS, we've had this caller, Ochiba Nelson, has been online for 5 minutes. We're going to come back to this as soon as he shares his opinion or ask his question. A lot of Ambazonians are calling. I'm going to take your calls. We have like 30 minutes just to take your calls, so just be patient. We'll take your calls one after the other. But this is the concern here that we're going to get back to SOS. It has to do with somebody within the cabinet of Sisiko might have known, and this person is Milan. It is yet a mystery that Milan and Anyangwe escaped arrest at Nera. We'll get back to that, but let's hear Ochiba Nelson. Ochiba, please, the floor is all yours. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Paddy, and thank Secretary for Communication, Dr. Mungwa. I want to just put some clarification for you, because Secretary don't put something, some color for there. He just say he want to take them for interpret them for some kind of way. First, we go for no say struggle. It is like illness. When you there for pain, you is sick. Sick man, you know they help different sick man. When you is sick, na person where it be healthy, it take care for you. So when we want free people, now those them where they still be in get freedom of speech, expression, where they not be in captivity, now them where they put hands for fight for free those who have been captured. So this thing it be, for example, like what you were Secretary of Communication, it talk concerning Ayuk Tabe. When I remember, La République they get the habit, it want impose leaders on people, and it will impose leaders with on agenda. Like Bala, for example, Bala be released because Bala be accept the decision where Ambazonia be not take power from you, they say for Ayuk Tabe. So La République is saying, you don't get no option, Bala no fit play anything than for release it. So if Ayuk Tabe it is still resist, it should not like for toxic one be like the one in charge or whatsoever. Now the reason where you see La République will delay it for inside prison. Nobody in the press say me Ayuk Tabe should for prison. All of us with the press say we will fight, we free all Ambazonians, including the way they did for prison. Send me the common out unconditionally with good health, because like publicly one says one was don't took injection for them. We have a way to do all to them. So now the reason why you see I'm saying on the 25th of January, I mean of December 2019, Tabe Young says he talks
put them for accountability. Then the interim government be just spend $125,000 close to about close to 70 million for defend Ayuk Tabe their case. Because some people that will go outside, they go to talk, say, oh, they want to abandon Ayuk, they want to abandon people for prison. No, IG don't fight, spend money for lawyers.
So you talk about the involvement of Dr. Sako spent close to 80 million francs CFA just for ensuring Ayuk Tabe, first of all, he were about being known and he be released.
Exactly. Yeah, so that means people don't go outside, they go talk, say, Dr. Sako or IG, they want to say, me, prisoner, them, Ayuk, that they die for day. See, they don't try for win the case for judicial system, you know, the worker, and now they talk, say, okay, they get for fight, and me, they fight, then you can't release them. They how they be go put the woman, French people, they be take people, they put her for inside Bastille, the woman, the way they be there outside, they take power, fight, they go storm the Bastille, they chakaram, they move on for day. They chakara those things, they move on for day. So maybe with people and they know, say we choose them, they not get nothing for do. We not get nothing for do with France. France being our colonial master. They not even try for even to say they want to do anything or any agreement with France with in that matter. Make the chiefs, everybody knows the international process we will settle this matter and the Swiss talks. Me la Republic come for the we birth certificate, marriage certificate for prove we wrong for the and for the we will end the matter. Plenty.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Just to append something, I really thank UN for making that clarity. But if you put in the context of time, you realize that yes, when he was in jail, the initial period he was in jail, there was no dispute as to who was in charge until there came a time when he formed a government in jail, and that was the time that Dr. Sako took over. In terms of what happened was that he simply abandoned us outside, created his own cabinet, because I understand he dismissed, he even dismissed Dr. Sako for reasons we don't understand. So we have to understand how things evolved. So it was at a point where he created his cabinet, and that's why he although people said Mr. Ayuk was impeached, he was not impeached. It's just like you said, Dr. Sako fired Chris Ano. He was never fired. He simply created another business, and they say, okay, now that you've created your business, there's a conflict of interest. You cannot have your own television station and then try to be the communication secretary. And the same thing happened in the time of Ayuk. And I hate it when people fail to understand the circumstances under which Dr. Sako rose to power. When Mr. Julius Ayuk Tabe created his cabinet in jail, we had no choice but to elect somebody to continue with the fight. Had it not been the case, I don't see how Mr. Julius Ayuk Tabe would have been controlling the IG while in jail. It's impossible. And at that time that happened, they said he was compromised because he started negotiating with the government and going around his own lawyers, and his lawyer resigned and left. And that's the history. We have to put the facts out there for the Amazonian people to understand. That's what happened. He abandoned us and created his own IG. And that's why they say the IG, Sisiko's faction, IG, Sako, because he formed his own IG in jail. So that should be clear. And now you have another group who want to go back and join him in jail. I don't just see the sense in that. It doesn't just make sense to me. I don't know where the intelligence comes from to join a criminal in jail.
Well, I think that it from my intelligence, because some Amazonians might just have abandoned the current situation. I have particularly set an intelligence group, and we're investigating to dig deeper other reasons as to why some people told us to hand power in Konengi. And I'm gradually putting some facts together. It is evident that that was just a ploy. Number one, it was a lie to win. It was a way for emotional blackmail against Dr. Sako, as though Dr. Sako is not taking care. Ayaba chose that card sometime in late 2019, when there was some form of collaboration between Cho Ayaba and Yerima. The card he played was to Akwanga tried playing the same card. They always, when they want to sabotage President Sako, the card they play, all of them play the same card. They want to make you feel like they actually love President or former President Julius Ayuktabe. And that is what Mr. Arnold was trying to do. He was actually aiming at winning support from the kick group. And I guess he has not got, because we have intelligence that he went, they requested to add him in one of their forums, and he was kicked out, kicked him out. So that was just a lie to try to, the man that I know will not want to give power to another person. It was a fight for power for himself. But since he was not bold enough to tell Ambazonians, listen, this is for me, he brought in Ayuktabe into the picture. So I think there's much for us to talk about this. If we focus on this, we might talk again for the next 1 hour only on this. How Anyangwe and Milan, that were close pals of President Sisiko Julius Ayuktabe, were not among the 10 that were kidnapped in Abuja at the Nera Hotel. Is yet a mystery because of every official meeting that Ayuktabe has featured. These two individuals have been there. Milan particularly was his secretary at the time. And then Professor Anyangwe was a very close advisor. During all the conclaves, they were all sitting together. When they have important discussions globally in America, in Europe, they were together. But on this occasion, intelligence has it that these two individuals were doubting the deal because they were initiators of the deals within Yaoundé and President. Let's make progress. You said something about the 1959 treaty, which brings us into the picture now because we have been recolonized. We did not sign any treaty, but that treaty, like there's nobody that could have explained this as best as you. You said it categorically that federation cannot work if you study that treaty. Federation is a null and a void. So if Cameroon gets into any sincere federation, that means the treaty will have to be dissolved. And France is not willing to dissolve it. And that's why probably, if I'm not mistaken, that's why probably they are silent as per the war in Amazonia. So you are saying that Ahidjo was never genuine in having a fair relationship with Foncha's government. It was just a means to an end. Whatever they had there as a federation for about 11 years was just a means to an end.
Right, absolutely. The moment we had a federation, France was the first who came and told Ahidjo, this thing is not going to work. We don't like it. Get rid of it. And how did they do it? Sabotage. They never funded any federal program. Anything that had to do with the federation to make it stronger, to make it more effective, the French did not want to fund, and it collapsed on its own weight, under its own weight.
Yeah.
And next came the United Republic. The same thing happened. It did not work for them. They did not like it. And when they discovered that, in fact, Ahidjo was somebody with a willpower, and he really wanted Cameroon to work, they said, what can we do? And they deceived the old man. They told him he was so sick. I don't know whether you were born then to know the story, that I don't think you can exercise.
I'm not sure I was born.
Yes.
I did not see Ahidjo.
We recommend. And remember that Ahidjo had a problem even with the French at that time. It's an interesting twist in history, because during the terrorist era, where the people in the West and in the littoral were fighting for genuine independence, I think one of the terrorists, I don't know who that is, was captured, and they expected him to have a fair trial. So
yeah.
A certain Mr. Mitterrand, who was a lawyer, came to Douala to defend this guy. When he landed at the Douala airport, he was turned back by Ahidjo. Unfortunately for Mr. Ahidjo, a couple of years later, he became the president of France. And Ahidjo said, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Can we make it? He said, no problem. Let me send you my prime minister to negotiate. Who was sent? Mr. Biya. And the French told him, we have confidence in you. What does that mean? We want you to be president. And that's exactly what happened. He just was tossed out. That's why Biya understands how the French think, and he has been very loyal to them to date. That's why he's been very safe. They will protect him to his last days because he sold Ambazonia to France by
That's amazing.
taking off that United Republic and just saying La République du Cameroun. By
So
that
you
stroke
said
of a pen, we met slaves, and that is
Yeah.
the story.
So you said they sabotaged whatever purported federation. Number two,
Yes.
that was evident is they made sure they empowered Southern Cameroons, disarmed them, destroyed
Yeah.
their mobile police,
Yeah.
destroyed the marketing board, destroyed the
Yeah.
Southern Cameroonian Bank, which was it was all about weakening the people militarily
Yes. Yes.
and
And
economically.
it's the
So it
same thing
was a
today as we
process.
speak. It's the same thing because if you don't have money, what can you do? You are useless. We are fighting this war because we live in advanced countries where we make enough money to sacrifice a week's pay. And I hope our restoration forces understand this. It's a lot of sacrifice from us. And that's why they made sure that you don't have any prominent Amazonian in any position of power, somebody who can think for himself. Look at all the people who would fight for us. Jua, how can they just mysteriously die? They were poisoned. Just like the guy, there's Yobe, whoever that is, who was poisoned. It's the same classic, is the same modus operandi. Anybody. But when you capitulate, well, they may just say, okay, just live as a enlightened slave, but that is it. Any of them. And they knew it. And that's why it came to a point where the late Dr. Fanlon said, this fight is for the next generation. We cannot fight. It was a bet and switch operation. That's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And they did not have all the information that we have today. That's all I'm saying. We have the information in black and white. It's all left to us what we want to do with that information.
Good. I think we just need to make progress with this because there's something which I'll be reading for us to get here so that we can confirm what Dr. Mungwa, Secretary of State for Communications, is saying here on this platform. This is something, sir, I want us to make progress on this. 1972, the catchword that they have always used on Southern Cameroonians has always been unity. He thought that to erase a federation that was an eminent threat, he was going to come up with a word unity, United Republic of Cameroon. So the Federal Republic of Cameroon can be replaced with the United Republic. And we are seeing the same actions today. Renegades, enablers, blacklegs have teamed up, partnered with the Norway cabal or the Norway warlords to come up with something that is plaguing our people. That's something you're supposed to talk about today. And we have lost fighters. We have seen destruction. And they want to call it the unity warriors. But unfortunately, the unity warriors have not only lost fighters out of their own making, they have targeted and killed our fighters. So it is your own question I'm bringing back to you, Dr. Martin Mungwa. So why is the unity warrior bad for the Amazonian restoration, Amazonian struggle, and the Amazonian restoration forces?
I mean, I'm just going to add on to what Secretary of State Frank Cheney said yesterday because I watched his program and he was very effective. I mean, it's very clear, and even I'm going to say what the president said. You cannot have unity on unity. The fact that we call our forces ARF is actually a unity force because it is a accumulation of all the different forces that existed before we had this title of, Ambazonian Restoration Forces. We used to have the Red Dragons, we used to have the Mountain Lions, we used to have the Marines of Bambalang, we used to have, the and so on and so forth. You have the Expendables. And we bundle them together as a unity force to call them ARFs. And then we know their command, their chain of command, all the way to Dr. Sako. And now somehow you have another unity warrior. Where is the command structure? Where is the command structure? How can you let yourself go into a military unit to form a union when you don't know the chain of command? If something happens to you, who is going to be responsible? How can we be responsible for soldiers that do not take instructions from our hierarchy? What sort of military structure is that? I mean, is it not just stupid that if they ask you, is that not the same thing that they're doing with La Republica? France are just going to France to sign a treaty. They have no legal counsel. What is the chain of command? Who is advising them?
Who did they consult?
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same structure. It's as if we're just blind or just so stupid. Just so stupid. No, this will never happen anywhere on earth.
So this is
that
just
you
a
go
cycle.
to sign a treaty on your country and you have never seen that treaty, you have never consulted a lawyer, and yet we have a country where they pride themselves of actually training people from Enam who have an idea in law. Most of our institutions, there's no university in Cameroon without a department of law, and yet not a single lawyer accompanied them to read that treaty. What is wrong here? Something is fundamentally wrong.
Yeah.
Something is fundamentally wrong.
So it's been Cameroon decades after decades recycling the same strategy.
That's right.
Dividing to conquer, using the people against themselves.
Yes.
And manipulating some. Fellow Amazonians, for those of you who are following, in just a couple of minutes, we'll be rounding up the show. I believe that the SOS has exhausted his discussion with us tonight. And we will be taking some of your questions. SOS, I'd like to ask you some other very pertinent questions. We're ending this week on Saturday with the first public general official hearing. That will be the first public official hearing of the Interim House of Representatives. ABC Amber TV and the ABC Newsroom has just received an official invitation from Madam Speaker, Dr. Winnie Lobati, and we have been authorized. There will be a press conference with the House and the President on Saturday, and you will have details of the program. So SOS, with this being established, you as the man at the helm of communications, we need to not just educate our public, we would have to educate the international community. What are you putting in place to ensure that this is communicated? Our history is understood, first of all, by Amazonians, and secondly, by the international community, that we expect collaboration, we expect partnership to would I say, actualize our legitimacy in this current war order or framework.
Yes, that's it's a very, very valid question, and I'm happy that the Interim House of Representatives has actually invited us to air this session, and I believe that in as much as there is no how do I put it, direct demonstration or proof that the international community is watching us, but I believe that they've been. I can assure that there are lots of interest groups who started listening to us, and this group or this population is actually growing in leaps and bounds. there are a few projects in the pipeline that we have. In fact, there's a very big one, which when we get a good grasp of it, we are going to tell the Ambazonian people, and I hope that it comes to fruition in a very near future, because you're absolutely correct. The international community needs to listen to us, needs to hear us, and I am not against even contacting maybe some senators or some of your congressmen, tell them about this interim House of Representatives if they will have time to listen to us, to zoom in and see what we're doing. I don't think there's anything wrong in that. But the fact that ABC News or ABC TV can be watched probably in every part of the world. I mean, that's again one of the reasons why we are doing so well, and people are actually watching us. It's going to be a gradual process. There are lots of things that we're trying to grapple with at the same time. Again, as I told you last time, we need more volunteers to help us. Last week I had a meeting with a communications group, and you were part of it. I mean, you work on TV or on the news part. You know that I've also put the communication team to work. We've established some guidelines as to what they have to do in order to make sure that what I bring on the table here actually comes from all the nooks and crannies. So it's a gradual process. But as far as next Saturday is concerned, I believe that the fact that you're going to air it means that the whole world will be watching us, for those who know about our problems, and I think that's the way forward, and it's an excellent idea. And just one thing I wanted to touch, about this meeting in France, and again, the fact that at times you may blame people by saying, "Oh, he's not even educated. He doesn't know that if you are going somewhere to sign a treaty or whatever, you need an attorney." But you see people like Professor Ufi Chinje smiling and so excited about the whole thing, at least probably as if that's her first time to go overseas. I mean, this is somebody with a doctorate degree from Britain, because I mean, I was there when she was there. She's doing this without thinking. I mean, there is some, I don't know how to describe it. Why wouldn't she even educate these people? That, I mean, at least take a semblance of an attorney to take it there, so that attorney should be able to read and understand what the implications are. These are very educated people, at least academically. So I tell you that Yaoundé is a place where people go to change their identities. It's just so strange. Highly educated people. No matter what you tell them, they don't listen. But when you are on a one-to-one, a relationship discussing about, they are so bright. But outside that, they don't seem to understand how the world works. You cannot go to sign a treaty without a legal advisor. It's impossible. I mean, what are you doing? It's impossible. Cannot be allowed. And I hope the Ambazonians understand this. It's not about me. It's about our future. This is very serious.
Okay, that's amazing. I'd like us to conclude on this. I think the program has been very interesting. The Philemon Young bid for vice president. There is it's so much for us to say about that, and I'm just thinking, where should we start? I think by now we should know that it's a fraud. It's Cameroon trying to cut corners. So I don't want to waste your time by asking you that. But again, we have to be able to dig into their minds and see what they hope to achieve with this fraud. There's no need. We know it is a fraud. It's a way of cutting corners. But looking at the instruments in place, if that becomes a reality, how useful can that be to them? What benefit will that play for them? And what disadvantage can it play for us or our discussion?
Well, I think I made it very clear. They'll obviously be compensated by the French. They give them pittance, very small amount of money, and they'll be very excited about it in exchange for
Now I'm talking
getting
about Philemon
anything.
Young, SOS.
Oh,
I'm talking about Philemon Young finally becoming a vice president and the office of the vice president be reinstituted in the government in Yaoundé.
okay. Put it in a very
What is
short.
the
It's like
significance? What do they hope to achieve with that?
I mean, it's the switch and bet and switch tactics that they've used over the years. It's like a very small store with a big sign. The sign is bigger than the store, and behind it, there's nothing you can even buy. They want to give you that image that, oh, you have an Anglophone president, be very happy, but that's it. It's just a sign. Behind him, there is nothing. There's absolutely nothing. What has Mr. Philemon Young done ever since I was a kid to today that you can say, oh, it's thanks to him that this structure is here? What has he done? What has he done? I mean, he spent so many years in Canada. I mean, to a point where I think he was asked to leave because he was the oldest diplomatic head of a diplomatic mission. You know, and nobody respected him. What has he done? When they started killing Amazonians all over the place, what did he do? What did
Nothing.
he do? Absolutely, that's the question you should
On the
ask.
contrary, he was trying to convince Amazonians to come and concede.
That's correct. And the guy has the audacity to say that we are the real oppressors. We are the real oppressors. That is an insult.
Indeed.
For the Senate resolutions
caller.
from the Congress to Senate and all those resolutions in our defense, and then you say we are oppressors. Therefore, the American Senate there is a Senate of oppressors. The Congress is a Congress of oppressors. And
EU.
Mr. Philemon Young is the smartest person to come and tell us that.
Yeah, the House
Can
of
you imagine
Lords
that?
is a house of oppressors. That's what he's trying to tell us.
Oppressors. Can you imagine? And then they stick behind France because this is the only country that there is no semblance of oppression from his point of view. That's an insult.
Okay.
We are no longer kids. These people don't know that. We have to be able to rise up and tell these people that you cannot control our lives to the point where you get into your graves. We cannot accept it. And we have to make it loud and clear.
Yeah, there's a lawyer, but there's a caller. Yes, caller. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Paddy, and the SOS for communication. I would like to talk in our language, like UN will always say that we should talk.
Yeah, go ahead, my brother. I will hear you.
Okay. So let's start with the one with Ayokabe. So it be clear, say Mr. Ayokabe, we go for Naira 10 for negotiate with the Republic of Cameroon for a deal of about 300 million. So as he be here the money, he glad they gather people now to go get the deal. So that they will appoint him again like a minister, so that it will dissolve the Amazonian fight, struggle for independence. So as he go there now, as Banky we talk for Mr. This one for Florida for a show, say Chris Arnold will give them intelligence, they go catch them. So now the only thing with Chris Arnold will clear the thing now for say me negotiate against me, they give back the power to Ayokabe. So that Ayokabe no go feel bad saying that they give the intelligence, they can't get them from Naira 10. Again, as it be clear, Cameroon government, La Republique go hang up, tell Ayokabe say hang up today, so that with the help of this and way we be communication, they get voice. The people them go feel surrender, they rally behind Chris Arnold. Then they join your power. Then now we go negotiate. Which you will negotiate? Then the Amazonian struggle go end. It not just be hard for people there for understand say and the deal way did it. So Christian now the only thing for you for do not only for destroy the IG. For example, see the whole they elect their own president in Tarh. He don't get no cabinet.
Then why they be the fight for the post? So you see, say Christian himself talk say I let the fight because say I want to be president. Now because say you know why is the way the fight where they deal with Colonel Bampi too. So Christian will always fight everything. Say, me Ambazonia them surrender, they feel rally behind me, then everything will collapse.
Okay.
Go back now for the one for go for now.
You get maximum 1 minute, comrade. You get 1 minute.
Okay. Okay. Now go now for the one for the interim House of Representatives. I believe say it will be very important for interim government for invite some of the representatives for United States here for Congress, so that means they be there officially like invitees if they will get time, because it will be like for introduce them with the way they go on, even if they not be official, come they officially, they be like just invitees. Then it will give some weight for the interim house, for no say the international body, the watch them, and those people from which way they will feel get from there, they will present her now for the for Congress or United States. Maybe they will start talk better. Say this will also be organized with their interim house of representatives. If they show some maturity, not they know when they hear all this the way they talk, say they be infighting and they know who they talk with. As we say, if the external relation and the interim part of the cabinet, they jointly get a meeting, then give official invitation for those people, it will be better. And not only for United States, any other country where they feel give invitation, they will feel just lock in like invitees for the trade. I think that I just want to post for the SOS. Me see which way to do and communicate with the cabinet. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. SOS, please.
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid point. I think I did say that in a way that senators, congressmen, we should endeavor. I think I'm going to make an effort to see that that is done, so that we can have a few congressmen actually attend the opening of this interim House of Representatives. I think it's a great idea, and I'm happy that you, ABC television, you have reached a certain level of professionalism that I think is time to do a showcase to the world what we can do, and opening the doors to to the interim House of Representatives, and letting everybody see what they are doing and what they are up to. I think this is a great opportunity. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, SOS. At this point, we've gotten to the close of this program. I would like the SOS to give a recap of everything he discussed and maybe a closing, the last word for the people, so that we can round up the show for tonight.
Okay,
SOS,
yeah,
please.
dear Ambazonians, we are going through a very difficult time in this struggle. We learned about 48 hours ago that the French decided to invite some of our, I think 38 of our traditional leaders to France, ostensibly for training on museums. But the real reason is to sign a treaty that will ensure that we are part of La République as one Cameroon. This is an idea that the Ambazonian people have rejected, and they have demonstrated that rejection in fighting a war now that's been 5 years and counting. We just want to educate and let our ARFs know that this is not something that we accept. And we've seen the attitude in the MPs, what they have done over the past 5 years. They've ignored totally the killings and the burnings of fellow countrymen. And we all realize that they are only there for themselves. I have taken a sample, or not even a sample. I've gone through the accord that La République signed with France in 1959, and the impact on our struggle. And you all know, at least by now, that federation is not an option, because federation is not going to work. A union with La République is not an option, because La République is not free. They have not had their independence. They're still an appendix of France. And therefore, the only option for us to survive as a people is complete and total independence. If we do not achieve independence, that is the end of us. We'll be annihilated, we'll be killed, and they'll make sure that they will forcefully seize the land and give it to La République as a trophy. And we have to understand this. And we have to do everything possible through diplomatic means, as well as making sure that we maintain our strength on the ground to ensure that this does not happen. So this is my message to you, Amazonians, and we are in for this fight. The president, Dr. Sako, it recognizes this situation and the rest of the cabinet. And mind you, we are in the cabinet because we lead the diplomatic arm of this struggle. The ARFs are leading the military arm, and the two of us, with the two groups together, we can make a change. There is no way that the ARFs will fight alone and go to Boya. It's not going to happen. You have to negotiate, and you negotiate with people who know the law. You negotiate with people who know how to tell your story. You negotiate with people whom they have worked with. And that's why the interim government is working under the Swiss process to make sure that we come to a solution that's amicable to us. And that is the story we have for today. Have a happy rest of the day or rest of the night, whichever is applicable. And I look forward to talking to you again next week. Bye for now.
SOS for this elaborate talk. Thank you very much. And I would like the technicians to let you go. They can remove you and just bring me so that we conclude this program for now. If the technicians are listening to me, allow the Secretary of State to go. You can bring me now on the screen. Let us have this program concluded upon. Fellow Amazonians, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to apologize to you that we were unable to bring to you Undaunted tonight. We had some technical issues with one of our virtual studios to connect with the main server, and that's why even the SOS came a little bit late. I don't know if the technicians are listening to me. I would like them to bring me on the screen and let the SOS leave so that we can continue, we can conclude this discussion. I'd like to give you people a program for tomorrow and make it easier for us to work. Tomorrow, we hope we will have Undaunted with you people tomorrow. And the week is a tight week. As always, on Thursday, we will also have Undaunted, but most probably we will not have the newsroom will be preparing for the big program comes Saturday. The big program comes Saturday. And Saturday by 10 a.m. the news will be streaming the news live globally with our two anchor ladies live on Saturday so that we can beam the interim House of Representatives. There will be a press conference that will be anchored from the newsroom. It's an exceptional program. It's history in the making. The president of the Federal Republic of Amazonia will be will be received by the House. I have been hinted that we have some international partners that will be a part of the program on Saturday. And so I'm officially announcing that on Saturday from 11 p.m., the interim House of Representative will be communicating to the international community their way forward, listening and presenting their project to the president. I hope there are bills that will be passed, there are bills that will be given to the president for signature. We hope that they must have deliberated on some things that they would want the president to consider. And we are also hoping that by now the president has had the final version or the final resolution of the Washington Conference, that is ASSC2. A lot of things will happen after Saturday. Another very interesting part is immediately after Saturday, we'll be moving full scale into Lava Storm 3, and a few days later there will be a launch of the draft. The the resource mobilization is already laying out a framework as to what they want the draft of 2022 to be all about. We will be having with the news tomorrow a very important slot as to why the draft, why we must draft, why Amazonians have got to draft. It's been a wonderful time with us on this platform. I want to thank our producers. If you noticed, it is the first time we're having one of our new producers actually producing this program from one of our virtual studios. It is a work in progress. We are working to have many more producers, and that will enable us to produce more programs and to have many Amazonians on air. I want to thank those that have been working on the backstage that were informed just this evening that they would have to produce this program. I thank them for their dedication. I thank you all Amazonians for tuning in, even though we started 2 hours late. You were there faithful enough, and all those that have called in, those that we could not take your calls, we cannot be here all day. We hope that the next time we have the chance to bring the SOS for communications and IT, we will receive your calls and we will talk with you. It's been an amazing evening, and like the SOS said, have a wonderful night. It's been Tarh Paddy King. Bye-bye.